Hello, everybody. Welcome to Good Morning, Good Night, episode 10. My name is Matt Demers. I'm here with my friend Will Chobra, and we are two esports veterans that talk a little bit about like what's going on our ends of the world. Will's in Korea. I'm in Toronto. And to generally cover, news that's interesting to us, topics that are interesting to us, all the basic bitch podcast topics, I guess. Will, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing okay. Obviously had a little bit of trouble with sleep again yesterday, so we had to postpone the recording of this. So I apologize for that. But other than that, doing okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat. I'm pretty much just like trying to like figure out a whole bunch of just little work things and junk like that. But otherwise, I don't know. Like things are pretty chill on my end. I'm mostly, I don't know. I picked up Doom Eternal for like the first time in like a couple of weeks.
I saw that.
And I was like, you know what? I thought I'd give it another chance. I had like a little bit of an urge in order to play. And for some reason, it just like bounced off. It bounced off of me again. I played it on launch and had a little bit of trouble with it. Not trouble with it, more just like it wasn't something that really like interested me. And then I uninstalled it for whatever reason and just said screw it. Like I don't really feel too broken up about like not being into it. And then today I was just like, you know what, let's give it another try. I was kind of feeling the itch. I've been watching like a YouTube channel. His name's Civvie11. It's Civvie 11. And he's one of those rare YouTubers that is able to work like skits and like a kind of meta narrative into his channel without it being super annoying. Because that's like almost the meme about like late 2000s like YouTuber like especially critics and stuff like that, is that they'll get their own like characters and story into like the background of their reviews, and then it's just super annoying because no one really wants to like hear that kind of stuff. So for some reason, I'm usually one of those people that don't tolerate that kind of stuff very well. Even with channels I tend to skip like the extraneous content and then just kind of get to where I want to be. But for some reason with him, it kind of clicks, and he's very much into like the older FPSs, like PC-based FPSs like Duke Nukem and Doom and like all the kind of games that were built around those engines. And I kind of skipped a lot of those. So it's kind of very interesting to like see it from someone who's clearly passionate about the subject that they're talking about. And then also just like, I don't know. I'm very much into super specific content lately, if that makes sense. Like it's just like one person who does one function very well instead of like a generalist kind of thing that covers a whole bunch of stuff. So he kind of got me back into just like exploring a genre that I never really like touched a lot, where those games like when I was growing up were very much like, oh, they're too extreme, or like I'm just not old enough for it yet. So playing like Duke 3D or playing like Doom now, it's given me a little bit of an appreciation, but at the same time it's like you see how they aged. It's kind of one of those things that if you weren't like experiencing them as a kid or as like someone who thought they were amazing at the time, they kind of lose their luster a little bit. But I don't know, I can appreciate them. I feel a little bit of a pressure to kind of like experience, be very well rounded in the games that I play or like the games that I enjoy. So I kind of just decided, they're really easy to get into and they work well on modern systems and the right installation kind of thing. But yeah, I don't know. Doom Eternal was just one of those things where I just found myself really wanting to play Doom 2016 over and over again. And I don't know. It feels weird. Everyone is almost the opposite of my opinion, where they're like, oh yeah, Eternal just blows 2016 out of the water. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, no, I'm not really having as much fun. I find it a little bit more tedious and a little bit more annoying. And I don't know if that's just me needing to like get good, or it's just not the type of game. And I think sorry.
I've actually seen like kind of half and half within just like my networks in terms of their takeaway from Doom Eternal. So for clarity, I haven't played Eternal. I have played 16, although I didn't finish it. But the way you're talking about it, I'm wondering, do you think it's for you personally at least, is it a matter of, you know that skit that ProZD does about gameplay mechanics?
I haven't seen. I've seen a handful of his stuff, but I know who he is. Yeah, I know who he is.
Okay, so basically he talks about how devs think more gameplay mechanics is always better.
Yeah.
And so so he's like playing an FPS, and then it tells you to like go like fetch eggs, and he's like, okay, I guess I'll do it once, and then when he comes back, it's like a different fetch quest and like a different like guiding quest. Like, do you think it's just like there's too many things to do rather than just, hey, here's a cool set piece, have at it? Like, did it feel like there was more you had to do? It almost sounds that way. That's what I was looking at.
The thing is that it was frustrating because like I wanted to like it more. Like when I first played it, everyone kind of says a similar thing where the first third or like quarter of the game really kind of sucks because you don't have access to all the mechanics. And once you get like the majority of the weapons, once you get like your dashes, once you get your double jumps, once you get your like all the ways that you're supposed to move and all the resources you're supposed to use, the game suddenly you're supposed to have this like revelation where like, oh, this is the game's kick ass now. I have all my tools and I can, I make them sync for myself. But for me, like for people who've never played it, what shifted between Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal is that Doom Eternal is more focused on like resource management and ammo conservation. Not conservation, but like flexibility. You're supposed to basically be constantly switching between your weapons, constantly be like, you have a chainsaw. If you chainsaw certain like any enemy, it erupts in a fountain of ammo. If you have a flamethrower that if you set someone on fire and then kill them, you get armor. If you do the melee executions, you get health. And the idea is that the game is balanced in a way that it's assuming that you're using all these mechanics all the time. It's assuming that you are always switching weapons, always, using the flames to refill your ammo, always meleeing when you can, that kind of stuff. And Doom 2016 had a lot of the same kind of concepts where like, okay, the chainsaw gave you an ammo fountain, the melee kills gave you health, but it was a lot easier to fall into specific play styles where it was like, I really like this weapon, or I really think this weapon is overpowered. I am going to use it, and if I run out of ammo for it, then okay, I'll switch to my second favorite weapon, and it all kind of works fine. But in Eternal, they really introduced like each enemy has their own weak point now, and they're weak against certain guns. So in order for you to kill things in a I don't even say non-optimally way, because there's a balance in certain games where you think, okay, well, I can do this the optimal way, but it'll still work if I don't. If I don't use, the easiest way to kill X enemy is to snipe off this gun that they have on their back so they can only use melee attacks, and then blah, 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 blah. But if I want to kill them another way, I definitely can. But in Doom Eternal, the balance is so like shifted where you have to play by the game's like Simon Says almost, where it's like, okay, I'm facing this enemy. I need to use this in order, like the advantage is so big, and the ways that the game punishes you for not using it are so big that it's like, I don't like the way that it forces me to play. And I think that's not the game's fault. And I think a sign of me growing older is being like, okay, that's fine. That doesn't say anything bad about me. That doesn't say anything about my inability to like be a real gamer, so to speak. Because I think that's what a lot of people kind of felt, is that for every person that kind of says, damn, like this isn't really that fun, I don't really find it that fun, there is going to be a contingent of people that kind of push back with, you're not enjoying it in the right way, or you're not good enough to enjoy it. And it's like, I think people are really sensitive to to people who are entitled to a certain experience. Like, I'm not faulting Doom Eternal for this. It's just a bad mismatch, I'm not demanding that Doom Eternal.
I mean, not every game is for everyone.
Exactly.
Totally fine.
But I think especially when it comes to big tentpole games, when it comes to big like huge release games where you are where there's hype and you see it on Twitter and news, or like news cycles for video game stuff, or Twitter and that kind of stuff, streams. You almost kind of sit there and, like, we talked about this a little bit with gaming FOMO and stuff like that. I talked about this with Valorant, where I was just I think that discussion was more around the career aspect of it, but especially with this, there was a little bit of a tinge where I was like, oh, does my taste just suck? Like, am I just like refusing to like get good at this? And I think my stream might have died, or at least my webcam. But the thing is that, like, especially in certain circles, like you said, you'll kind of hear that similar thing. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
I think, no worries. I think a big part of that is probably social media. So I think back to especially Twitter. It's funny, I was having this discussion with someone earlier this week about Twitter. Just like both of us would agree that is our least favorite social media platform. But especially when it comes to games, obviously, during like a release week, there's just a lot of hype, and it's hard to even fathom speaking not against it, but like anything you say that isn't praising it is taken as if it's against it, right? Because it's like hype, and there's release week hype, and everyone just wants to praise it because they're loving it, especially like you said, if it's a tentpole game or like a long brand.
Yeah, definitely.
But for instance, I had a discussion with Maven. For those of you who don't know, he's a Call of Duty commentator who loves Zelda games and loves open world games. And so for him, Breath of the Wild was like the ultimate match. And I believe, I might be swapping which one he was talking about, but I believe he made a tweet saying, or he was responding to someone saying that Breath of the Wild was like the best open world game. And because I had seen, he was responding to someone talking about how they didn't like Breath of the Wild, and he tweeted that. And as someone who had trouble getting into Breath of the Wild, and in fact just stopped playing it after like the first 3 hours, even to this day, I went back, and because I had been following, all he's said about Breath of the Wild, I kind of mistook it, and I responded by saying, I don't know if I could really say it's one of the best Zelda games. And then he responded saying, well, I would rank it differently within Zelda games. I just think it's like the best open world game. So I think there's also just a lot of room for error on, like, especially on social media. Because I find that, because for instance, like, I just don't do well with open world games, right? So I don't do well with Fallout, Red Dead, like Skyrim, Breath of the Wild, like, and all these are obviously just mega hits and huge followings. And I find my experience about that conversation very different when I'm talking about it like on social media versus on a stream or in person, because I'm also just more coherent, and I can, like you just explained about how it's not the game's fault, you just think it's not for you. I think there's just more room, like in person, or at least through like full speech, that you can explain. I'm not saying the game's bad. There might still be parts that maybe you disagree with the design choice, right? But therefore, like, I didn't like it, and like that's fine. And I find more people are also more understanding when it's like that versus when you're on a platform that's like clearly just riding the hype.
I think that a lot of that, it also comes down to how invested you are in your content being like based around your opinion. Like, I think that people who have investment in, people paying attention to them for their, opinions on these kind of games, kind of look at it in a different way where, how to explain this? Social media, I don't want to say social media sucks, because that's how I've made my living. But I definitely
think it sucks. I will say
I definitely echo what you said, where it's like Twitter is like the worst, where it's actually almost similar, where because it's made such an effort in order to be everything to everyone, it's like I kind of am very nostalgic for like the internet, where everything had a very specific function, and you went to individual sites for things, and not just, okay, this is where I get all my like my gaming news is all on Twitter, instead of saying like, okay, I'm a Doom fan or I'm a hardcore Doom fan. I have this forum with people, like-minded people. And I think that's kind of being reclawed back a little bit because Discord is kind of like taking that back. But at the same time, it's like when you have an investment in building clout or building an audience with certain opinions, there can definitely be like a pressure in order to have the right one, or to feel like if you feel excluded. Like I can imagine Breath of the Wild is an interesting case because I feel like a lot of esports people talk about it because it's very like travel friendly for people who are playing on planes and stuff like that, or it was just like a nice novelty to like have on a plane. It's like, oh my god, it's this full featured like Zelda game, first party, not this, you know, not like a DS game or something like that. It's an actual like real one. But like I don't like Breath of the Wild that much either. And I think a lot of people, once you kind of get over that first couple hours of thinking, okay, this is a new formula in the Zelda game, you think and you're just like I only finished one of the dungeons, like one of the like 4 main dungeons, and once I filled out the map and once I went to every map tower and filled it out, I lost complete interest in the game because I just didn't I didn't feel it. I felt that the game world, I actually wrote a thing when it came out saying that the game world felt very lived in, and I like it when open world games have like very functioning cities and very functioning like population in them. Like one of the things I don't like about World of Warcraft is that when you go into a big city, there's nowhere for all the NPCs to live. It's just kind of like all the shops and stuff like that. There's nowhere where you can expect and say, even if you can't access the rooms or like the apartments or whatever. I don't need to go into every person's house. I just need there to be a reasonable expectation. Like I like if you've ever played World of Warcraft, anyone listening has played World of Warcraft. What I like about Ironforge, the dwarf city, is that it has all these little boxes attached to the mountain that represent windows and whatever. And it actually looks okay. Cool, perfect. That's where those people live. But something like Orgrimmar, I always played Horde. I always played Horde in World of Warcraft, but I don't like the Horde architecture. I was always very jealous of the Alliance architecture. And that was one of the things I liked when Blood Elves got introduced to the game, was that the architecture actually looked functional. It didn't look like Horde buildings were held together with duct tape, essentially. Because that's why I always played Tauren, is Tauren villages were actually looked a little bit better than the Aura Control, and the Undercity was okay, but again, it didn't really look like people lived there. It was just a collection of rooms. But anyways, that's kind of getting beside the point, is that like, yeah, I think if your perception as a creator or a person that's visible on Twitter, and again, a large part of this podcast has been you and me talking about like how we kind of look at things a little bit different, or like we are not a normal use case for these platforms.
Sure.
Like if you're just a normal person and you just don't give a shit about Doom Eternal, you've spent your money and you might get a refund, or like you might have, pirated it or something like that. There's no real huge investment into being right or wrong about it. You just like go do your thing, go to work. It doesn't matter. Who cares? But if someone, I saw this a lot with the Final Fantasy remake, where there was almost an expectation that when people's fans saw how the ending of Final Fantasy VII Remake went, and like we talked about it a little bit in terms of, remakes versus reboots and whatever. I'm not going to spoil it here, but there was almost an expectation that they were like, oh man, my favorite creator is going to hate this, or oh man, my favorite creator is going to dump on this so much. And there's almost that anticipation there because it validates your opinions, and it gives you a catharsis because you're like, oh, someone who actually makes money off this, or someone who is important enough to command this large audience, they share my opinion, so that must mean that it isn't bad. So I don't know. It's kind of weird being on the other side of that, where you're thinking like, okay, well, everyone else likes Doom Eternal and everyone else thinks it's amazing, but I don't really. I think, like I said, growing up, and especially once you get kind of like stable income that doesn't require that kind of clout chasing, it's a lot easier to just be like, no, it wasn't for me. On to the next, whatever.
Yeah.
I also laugh because it almost feels like Doom Eternal like came and went. Like it was just like, okay, it came out, it was a game, and then like Animal Crossing comes out the same day, and maybe it's just the accounts that I follow or whatever. But it feels like Animal Crossing has a lot more cultural impact or like cultural stature than Doom Eternal did. And I don't know if that's just because it's an ongoing like service game, or I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's just I mean, not only is a service game, like, that is a slice of life game, right? Versus Doom Eternal is it's an impactful FPS, but it's also just a campaign, right? Like, once you play it, you're done. And most people who are really into Doom are going to, like, play it release week, right? Or even just within the month. So I think it just, it was one of those, it made a splash and moved on. I think it doesn't help that obviously there's not, gaming conventions or whatever where it can, like, continue to be brought up of like, this is what Doom Eternal did, or this is what we did with Doom Eternal, here's what we're doing next. Like, that conversation just doesn't continue. So I think it had the hype within that community, but also I would say probably with the influx of streamers, like, not new streamers and even existing streamers some of them trying to diversify their content with all this going on, it probably didn't make as much of an impact even in, like, the streaming world compared to what it might have done if everything was normal.
There is a multiplayer thing for Doom Eternal, but at the same time, it's like the arena FPS genre is like, it's like fighting games. It's like super dense and super, like, hard to break into, and you've got all these, like, multiplayer shooter, like, battle royales and tactical FPSs. I'll say with giant air quotes, the Sieges, Counter-Strike, Valorant. And it's like, no one's going to play Doom Eternal for its multiplayer. That's not going to extend the life of the game for, like, it might be inventive or something. I played maybe, like, 1 or 2 matches of Doom 2016 multiplayer, and it was like, okay, it's like, feels like Unreal Tournament. I'm not really into it. Like, it doesn't have that kind of investment or that kind of, like, social element, I guess. It's like some people like just booting up a deathmatch and kind of just going, but I'm just not one of those people. Like, I don't know. I found that Doom 2016 was a lot better in terms of the levels. This Eternal is very much a, like, go down a hallway or go down a set piece and then you reach an arena, and then you go down another hallway and another set piece, and then you reach an arena. And it's kind of very, like, the maps are made in a certain way. And, like, I think 2016 was probably made the similar way, but I just didn't notice it as much. I always just go back every once in a while and play this one level that I really like, and I don't do that for many games. I don't really think about, I really like this one level, I'm gonna go boot it up or reinstall it again just to play this one level again. And I don't know. I think it was very easy. It was very much easier to feel in the groove with Doom 2016, and now with Eternal, it's like, for contrast, I don't remember what your max ammo limit was in Doom 2016, but your starting max ammo for your main shotgun, which is your first weapon in Doom Eternal, you have 14 shotgun shells. And it's like, that's how they expect you to always be chainsawing things or moving around to pick up ammo or whatever, is that you cannot rely on one gun for an entire fight, and you probably will, if you're not actively trying to refill your ammo through the chainsaw mechanic, you're going to run out of ammo every fight for every gun. Right. And it's like, I don't want to think about that. Like, I don't, like, because they added so many, like, mechanics they added mechanics on how to get more armor, they added mechanics on how to get more health, and it's like, because of that, they've rebalanced the game, because they assume that you're always going to be, like, wanting to refill those bars instead of going into an arena and thinking, if I'm really good, okay, I'm going to have to refill my health with pickups on the ground, or I'm going to have to refill my ammo with pickups on the ground, or maybe if I'm desperate, I can use the chainsaw. This one is, every combat encounter is based around the fact that they expect you to, like, lose a lot of health and use the mechanics in order to refill them. And because you have all that extra shit to think of like, okay, am I using my movement effectively? Am I using the right guns for the right weak spots on these enemies? Like, am I, that enemy's weak enough. Can I go melee kill them in order to get health back? Am I thinking fast enough to set them on fire before I kill them for good so that I get armor instead of health, or with health, or whatever? And it's just like, I'm exhausted. I don't want to think about these things. I like the catharsis of shooting demons, going through the levels, going fast, and feeling in the zone. It has all these extra thoughts on top of it right now, and I can imagine a lot of people will feel challenged from that, but I don't. I feel annoyed and I feel frustrated, and like, it isn't so much an expectation of, oh, I feel like I want to win every time. It's just like, I'm tired. I'm an old man.
Sure.
I don't have all these things.
I think it just sounds like it's, again, just different stuff for different people, right? The more you describe it, again, not having played it, I've watched a little.
Yeah.
For Doom Eternal, I mean. It just sounds like they went the route of like, we want this to be hardcore on like all different fronts, right? Not just like the grittiness, right? So it sounds like it, like you described it. It sounds more like it's more of a challenge mode, and that's not for everyone, right? For instance, like you play through, like recently I just played through the Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 remastered campaign, and even back then, and for every Call of Duty actually, like I always start on veteran difficulty, and certain iterations I felt like that was a mistake. But like I'm the type where, especially when it comes to FPS, is like I'll also just enjoy the challenge of it, but I also recognize that it completely takes away from my, some part of my ability to just enjoy the campaign if it's good, right? If the campaign story is good, right? It makes it into a different game than just I'm enjoying this, or like you said, I'm just kind of having this catharsis of like being a superhero. And it makes it into this almost puzzle of, all right, like I gotta hide here, pick them off, pick up their weapon, and I know their spawns, and I know like how far I have to go to get a save. Like it turns it into a more of a challenge run and a speed run type thing rather than a
it's weird
just shoot them up.
Yeah, because there's like experiencing the game, like the campaign. Like I'm not going to experience Doom for like the story, so to speak. But I almost feel like if you're playing things at higher difficulties, you're playing them to specifically be challenged. And for some reason, like when you mentioned that, like feeling like a superhero, a small part of me just twinged and said, oh, that's a bad thing. Because I've definitely heard that when it comes to MMO criticism, a term that people use with Blizzard's model of like of certain dungeons or raids or whatever is that it's a theme park simulator. You're not actually like looking to learn the encounters or like be creative in how you take down bosses. You're just basically executing these giant set pieces, having a good time, getting loot, and then leaving. And for some reason, I don't know if that's just a weird like elitism thing where I hear, oh, I want to be a superhero, so he's implying, like I know you're not implying this, but it's the thought of, if people are telling me that I just want an easier time to coast through it, it's almost hitting like a weird ego thing where it's thinking like, oh, this person's not hardcore to enough to meet the challenge. So they just want to have no difficulty and coast through the game. And I don't think that's what, like, I guess maybe that's what's hitting me weirdly about that, is that I'm trying to find out, like I said, I'm not saying that you implied that. I'm more trying to figure it out for myself. I'm trying to figure out, okay, do I just not like this because it's challenging me, or do I not like this because it's inconvenient, or do I not like this because it's harder than I thought it would be on a first playthrough, or do I just not like this because the game is bouncing off of me, right? Having all those like weird little intersections, like I'm a big overthinker. I'm a big like self-awareness advocate essentially, and I'm not going to just basically be like, yeah, this game sucks because I don't like it. That's a hard balance to hit, especially like I think if certain people pride themselves as a generally like hardcore gamer as a person, so when they bounce off of something they don't like, they might not know how to like articulate that properly. They might just think, okay, well, I guess I'm just not good enough, and because I'm not good enough, I'm the problem here. So gaming is very weird because it's so interactive, and because so much of our like actions define how we like interface with the game or whether we actually enjoy it. Like what I was thinking about during all this was survival horror games, where like Silent Hill or Resident Evil or whatever, where part of the tension comes from how little ammo you have. It's kind of like a horror movie where, like, I know both of us aren't really into horror games that much, but I can understand why it's fun, but I don't think I would have a lot of fun with that myself, where I'm a hoarder when it comes to items in games. I'm one of those people that never uses the big potion until the final boss, even if you do use it at the final boss. And I feel like that's a weird I've heard a lot of like jokes and memes about that specific situation a lot more lately, and I've tried to be breaking that habit almost. I've tried to have been like, okay, the game's giving me this item, let's just use it. It's not going to be bad. It's not going to like break my game, and even if it does make things harder later, I mean, that's the narrative of the game, is that okay, you have to meet this challenge, you have to beat it with the circumstances that you have, right? So I don't know. I think gaming is just like a very, it's a consequence of the medium, but it's also a consequence of my taste changing as I get older, and that's always a weird thing to think about. I don't know. Happy birthday, by the way. Yeah. I know you said you didn't talk about it, but I wanted to wish you a happy birthday.
Yeah, from last week. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, no, I honestly, I think it's just, again, like expectations, right? So, for instance, like actual, like superhero or super soldier type games, right? So, for instance, like, I keep going back to like Dishonored because that's the one I've played.
Yeah.
But there's, what's that? Oh, shoot, what was the one on? I think it was mostly on PlayStation where you're like a mutant. You have like
Infamous?
a mutant arm or whatever. Yes.
No, not.
No, not Infamous.
Not Infamous, but I know what you're talking about. I think it. Fuck, I have the first and second one on my. No, hold on.
Yeah. There's two. You're on the right one.
Yeah, Prototype.
Oh, that's Prototype. There we go. Like what I've seen of those games, but then at the same time, for instance, like Dishonored, the reason, so I had trouble. I could recognize that Dishonored was a great game, but I had trouble fully enjoying it because, like you could not use several skills, right? You could just use a very specific set of skills that you got or abilities you got that you were used to and get through the whole game. Like that was no problem, and that was kind of part of its charm, right? You can play it your way or whatever, but at the same time, like because I'm given all these abilities, I'm like, oh, I feel like I need to do all this cool stuff, but then like some of them take a lot of effort. If you really like, it needs to be a very thought out like playground, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's just this difference of expectation where it's not necessarily, like you said, it's not necessarily about difficulty, but it's how you get to that point. For instance, like in Doom Eternal, I'm sure the people who managed to juggle all the mechanics that the game threw at them also feel like superheroes.
Yeah.
But it required a lot of different, a very different path to get there. And I would say with any game, it's obviously harder if you're changing something in a sequel versus if it's a brand new like reboot or an IP, because there's an expectation of what it was for you before that, and then it wasn't. So, but I think outside of social media, more people are more understanding now actually about different games and people like appreciating different genres or not able to appreciate different genres, I guess is a better way to put it. But the only thing is, for instance, I would be guilty of this too. For instance, if someone's like let's say I have a favorite game, right? So like Mega Man X, and someone's like, I didn't like Mega Man X. I thought it was, or let's say they even simplify. They're like, I thought it was dumb. Like I would be like, oh, but you have to play it.
But you have to play it all the way,
right? But like but I wouldn't also like if they actually showed some resistance to it, I wouldn't also be like, well, you're not a gamer to me because like right? It's just my knee-jerk reaction of like, oh, but it's so like it's almost I wish you could like it because I like it so much, but at the end of the day, like it's okay if you don't, but it's more one of those things where I want to share it with you rather than So a lot of people I know respond that way, and they don't mean that like, oh well, now I don't consider you like as much of a gamer or whatever, right? And also, like, if that standard was true, especially within the esports community where everyone grew up like playing games, it seems like a lot of people that are very, very ingrained in esports have grown up playing a lot more games than I have, partly because of my console limitations of just being on Nintendo. Then I would have been like, I don't know, exiled from the community a long time ago if that was the case, because like I didn't play freaking Final Fantasy right until 2020. And all these other IPs as well.
I'm that person with movies and TV. Like for me, if something doesn't like really hook me, it's not something that I usually pursue. And something that you mentioned, like the gatekeeping aspect of it, whatever, it's silly. It's kind of goes back to something that we talked about earlier on an earlier episode, where like, you know, fandom for these kind of things are replacement for a social group. So, you know, having your opinion validated or feeling like a social connection with someone because they like the same things, it's like, I can understand that's where that kind of desperation comes from. But as you get older and you kind of just realize like, okay, that effort isn't really worth it. I'd rather, you know, as stereotypical as it is, I'd rather, you know, like or be around people who like me for me, you know, rather than the stuff that I just happen to like.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's I had a really good point and I lost it. That sucks.
Oh no.
I know, right? But yeah, if someone didn't like something that I like, that I really like usually it isn't really that big of a deal. Like it's not like a deal breaker in terms of me wanting to like talk to them or anything like that. I think we've just seen going back to the kind of original like social media topic, it's just we've seen so much like explosions or like just arguments or just stupid stuff that it's ironically made it a lot more easy to just not share anything at all. I don't like, there are days where I don't really make that many posts as I used to, or just like, there are definitely things that I write drafts for and then I just think, do I really want to like crack this open today? Do I really want to like, you know, deal with the potential like, not backlash, but do I really want to like have arguments about this? Not really. No one really needs to know this about me. I'm content keeping it to myself. And with that in mind, it's just like it kind of it's an ironic thing where social media is just like made us want to like share, or well, the companies want us to share more and more things, but as time's gone on, we've just kind of regressed just to not wanting to at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've stopped tweeting a lot about esports stuff, and obviously this would be different if I was like directly involved in events or, you know, broadcasts. But
yeah,
just because for me, I think the biggest thing is like if there was if it was, say, just because it's the first thing that comes to mind on Reddit, right, where your posts can be longer, and depending on the subreddit, sometimes it's expected that it's longer. That'd be one thing. But the biggest thing for me on Twitter is just like there's no way, right? There's just no way I'm actually going to say something coherent with the right disclaimers and explanations, so that even people who don't know me can understand where I'm coming from within that character limit. Like it's just not going to happen. And so for those who do follow my account, you'll notice anytime I do talk about a debate-ish topic, like it never ends with one tweet, because it's like how can it, right? As soon as I end it at one tweet, it's just going to become controversial, like just automatically. And it's not, and I always think it's not the reader's fault, because a lot of times like I've actually I've rarely had people that just flame my tweet, and I have a funny story about that. I'll get back to it in a second.
Okay.
But a lot of times people who got angry at like a tweet I made, I would respond and be like, hey, like that's not what I meant, or well, I probably should have written this follow-up, and then they'll just immediately back down. They'll be, oh, sorry, like I got really emotional and I misread it. And I'm like, yeah, it's not, and you know what, it's like, it's not your fault that you misread it. It's just literally this platform is built where it was never meant for deep discussion, but now it's being used for that. And it's like the default communication forum for the internet. Or well, at least like Western, it's dumb. It's not built for that, like you said. Right. It's more for like sharing short headlines, you know, whether it's about you or even the news, and it's about sharing just short snippets that, like, quite frankly, and I don't mean this in a negative way because I use Twitter as well, but to get attention, right? And I don't mean that in like a needy way, but that is just what it was built for. And or to draw attention, I guess is a better way to put it. To put it, whether you're directing it somewhere else. But nowadays, it's used for political discussion. It's used for game discussion. It's used for everything, and it's just it's very disheartening. But going back to the story about getting flamed on Twitter is so back when I was working for OGN in Korea. So this was between 2013 and 15. I had made a comment about a K-pop song.
Oh no. I can see where this is going.
Yeah, you already know. So there was a group, a K-pop group called Lovelies. It's a girl group, and they had a song called "Achoo," like the sneezing sound. And
okay,
it was so popular that it was being played everywhere, right? So imagine like if you grew up in the States, or I don't know if it was just as popular in Canada as well, but like Neo's "So Sick" was like it was a good song, but it was literally played everywhere and in every radio station, and you just heard it all the time. So I made a tweet saying this song is the annoying song of the season, and what I meant by that is simply that like I am having it drilled into my ear, literally everywhere. That now I almost want to hate it just because it's played so much. And then I didn't tag anyone, I didn't hashtag it, right? I was just like making a comment, and the fans of this group come out in droves, and they just start bashing me with no I guess background, just like straight up.
It's attacking their identity, man. It's attacking their sense of self.
And they were like, you don't. My favorites were the comments that were like, you don't even understand the lyrics, and I'm sitting here like, I actually translate, like I speak this language, and like you guys are like looking up translations. I'm just like, what is going on? And and so it was just like this weird revelation that I was like, oh, like some people actually have these like search columns set up, even if it's not like part of their job.
Oh yeah,
because like I would never do that if it wasn't if it didn't affect my job. But like I was realizing, oh, like these people must have like Lovelies like searched all the time.
Oh
and
yeah.
I was like, oh god. And then we just recently found out, someone on my Discord just recently discovered that apparently some people made a forum post about my tweet back then. And they were like discussing whether this esports entertainer, as they called me, which is just amusing in and of itself, like had a valid opinion. And the forum post was even funnier because there were actually people there that were just like, that's just his opinion, or I know. Like that
Who
must
cares?
mean that it's just, and some people were like, oh, that must mean that it's just like being played a lot, so that's like a good thing as a fan of the group. And then other people were like, who does he think he is? Like, is he even relevant? And I was just like, what is going on? My mind was just blown.
Also, part of it is the dumb verification thing, where like I got super lucky in there was a 3-month period when Twitter had verification open for application, where you could submit a multi-form like answer questionnaire thing about why you should be verified. They only had it open for 3 months, but I was one of those people that got verified during that time.
Nice.
And it was the month before I left the score, because I basically said, okay, I've been quoted in these Polygon articles or whatever about esports. I worked at this company, whatever. And then randomly one day, the verified account followed me, and I was like, wait a second, and then checked my account, and I'm verified. I'm like, okay, this is stupid. People assume that because you have a blue check mark, your opinion matters more, or your opinion is like more validating. And I don't know, it's stupid. It's really dumb. Like I really wish that because there's both sides of it. There are people who play the side of, oh, you're just a dumb blue check mark, like what do you know? But then there's the other side of it where like people assume that it means something, like actually, and it's like, no, who cares? It's just a mark saying that you're a real person and not someone like you're worth the only like value check that a check mark gives you, like no pun intended, is that you are not an imitation, like you're worth imitating. Like if I don't know, they verify journalists and other people because they think that people will just create fake accounts, and they want the messages coming from those accounts to like, matter and have weight and say, right, this is the real person saying it. But I don't know, people, it's a weird caste system almost. It's a weird like thing that people have put value to. And something you said earlier about Twitter and just like the scope is I think because like Twitter's never made a profit as a company. Twitter has never generated enough revenue to like be profitable. And I remember in journalism school in first year, there were people arguing. This was 2009, so this is 3 years after Twitter launched. Twitter launched in 06, I think.
Oh, really?
Wow. 06 or 07. Old. It was South by Southwest in 2006, and the main reason why it was 140 characters was that was the SMS limit, like the SMS text limit.
Right.
So it was originally just supposed to be, okay, you can just text your messages and that'll show up. But and that's the reason why it took so long for them to convert to 280 is because a lot of their developing countries that they were trying to get adoption in still only had the SMS thing. They didn't have good enough 3G or LTE stuff. But first year at university, I'm sitting there in journalism school and I'm actually having an argument with a classmate being like, the classmate is like, why should we learn Twitter? Should we even bother with this? And eventually the conversation just boiled down to, I was just like, I'm going to learn it and I'm going to take your job. I'm going to learn it because I know it. I'm going to get a job that you're not going to get, But I don't remember. Okay, hold on. I got to make a quick Wikipedia look for something. But the main reason why Twitter suddenly became this like national forum or like international forum was like 2010, 2012 when Arab Spring happened in Egypt, when they knock out the what's it called? They knock out the Wi-Fi and they knock out the internet. They shut off the internet or whatever. And one of the things that the only way that people were reporting and stuff like that were Twitter. And it, because they could use it on SMS and whatever. So all of a sudden, Twitter's never made a profit. So all of a sudden, Twitter has all this clout, like no pun intended, considering people use it for clout now. But Twitter all of a sudden has this importance. It's a reporting tool. It's a medium in itself. It's like you couldn't thread things back then. You couldn't retweet things back then. You couldn't attach images natively. You had to use TwitPic or whatever. In order to retweet something, you had to RT and then the username and then whatever. That was completely user driven. Like hashtags before Twitter were a method of searching for things, and then they ported it over to Twitter, and they didn't start with Twitter. But so Twitter all of a sudden is like, okay, we're important now. And if we want to keep being important, maybe we can start making a profit because people will want to pay for ads on our platform. So, pushing Twitter as this, like I said, international forum, it's simultaneously like weird, but also contradictory because Twitter wants to like be this public utility almost, but then it censors and like moderates very heavy-handedly in some ways, and it's like, how do you balance those two things? It's so dumb. In most cases, it just doesn't work out. And like I said, I said earlier, it's a centralization of the internet. It's taking, like, I remember when I was growing up, being on the Naruto forums as a small child, or like being on Neopets, or like just being on like a number of different websites that I would all know the URL of and go to every day because for different functions. And now it's like, why would I go to any of those places when I could just go to Reddit that will aggregate all the stuff that is worth reading? Or why would I go to a forum? Are you kidding me? Why would I go to a forum and write a huge essay of something when I can just be on Twitter? And like you said, it's for people who read headlines. It's not for people who actually read articles. It's conditioned people in order to just read headlines and try to derive meaning from that. And I mean, it's killed the journalism industry. Journalism is dead and has been dying for years. And I don't know, like it's something I thought, ironically, when I went into journalism school, I thought to myself, I said, this will be figured out by the time I'm out of school. They will have figured out how to make a living in journalism by the time I'm done school. Someone will have figured out a market or like an online monetization method. And it got worse. It got so much worse. So
Twitter is just, and again, it's not, I don't, like, I say things like Twitter is garbage, but what I really mean is what it's become and used for, right? Like you said, it's not, no, or I shouldn't say no, but like most platforms aren't like bad just inherently.
Oh no, totally.
It's just how they evolve, right? For instance, like people who hate Facebook, like Facebook was like I actually kind of enjoyed. Facebook was one of the few social media platforms I kind of enjoyed in the beginning, but only for a very short bit. I mean, I'm just not very big on social media to begin with, which is maybe a shock to some people, but I don't have a problem saying it. Like I only really use it because it has become a part of my job to some extent.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah, but otherwise, like I wouldn't use it at all, right? If I wasn't working in a position and industry that relied heavily on social media, but Twitter is just it's, and I think with I was just looking at Twitter right now, and part of me is like, man, if replies weren't a thing, it'd be such a cleaner platform, but at the same time, it would definitely be less populated, right? Because for a lot of people, like you said, there's this validation of being able to say like, I took part. I'm doing my part, or I'm relevant now because I've responded to something and I've said my opinion. Same with the people who post everything like the thoughts and prayers whenever something happens. Yeah. It's like I did something. It's just this weird cultural phenomenon or generational phenomenon, I guess, that we've started to breed on our own. But yeah, Twitter's weird.
It's the no bad pets, only bad owners kind of thing, where it's like it's shaped by both how the people who are running them use it, but also how, like what they're able to tolerate and what they encourage. It's like with Facebook, it's like I liked Facebook, but then it became very blatant on how much data it was siphoning from people and how that was being used. And like over the last couple of years, I've become a very big privacy nut when it comes to like my internet usage and how I can be tracked and how my data can be used. Like I said, I was saying on the pre-stream, I'm messing around with a Discord bot and like what's it called, the Twitch bot, but they're all self-hosted. They aren't, I'm not using MooBot or Nightbot that are hosted elsewhere. I want to own that bot. I want to own that data, because not necessarily I'm going to sell it or it's particularly valuable, but I don't want anyone else to make money off of something that I don't also make money off of, if that makes sense. So I don't know. It's an ethical thing, and it's definitely like a longer conversation about just like how the internet's changed. But like I still write on my blog. Like I still write on mattdemers.com, quick plug. But like for those things, it's like I don't expect it to be like the old days where when I was growing up, or not growing up, but when I was like starting to like write professionally and trying to like freelance and stuff like that, there's sites like ProBlogger. I don't even know if that site exists anymore, but basically it was like a site about like how to find blogging work and how to like make affiliate marketing work with like Amazon and like, referral links and that kind of stuff to make money. And it's like that entire industry almost doesn't exist anymore, except to cater to people who share things on Facebook and Reddit and people who are older. So like mommy bloggers and like that kind of stuff. But even that stuff has all just moved to Instagram. So it's kind of a weird nostalgia, and it's definitely a nostalgia, and it's one of those things where I'm old man yelling at cloud, being like, man, I really wish people would go back to appreciating the written form. I really wish people would go back to appreciating like a nice written blog post, and go to mattdemers.com regularly instead of just going to my Twitter, and even with that, it's like creators I follow and stuff, I don't go to their main site regularly. I'm relying on Twitch to notify me when they're streaming, or I'm relying on Discord or Twitter to serve as aggregates of all this information that I care about. And then I'll make a choice based on that. So I'm not guiltless on all of this, but it's a very weird thing where, that's Patreon too. Patreon is expecting to go to a certain .com in order to, like, it's an altruism based like form of support, and that shit doesn't scale. I'll say that for sure, is that there's only a certain ceiling that you can get with that kind of, I will contribute back to this artist or this creator because it feels good to. Most people need that extra kind of like kick towards what's in it for me, You know, if I'm giving my money, what am I getting extra back, or what exclusive thing am I getting? And I don't know. I'm 30 years old now, and I have been thinking lately about like how long I want to stay in internet-based stuff, like whether I'm going to be like 50 years old and still like doing chill hop stuff, or like what am I even going to be working in 20 years kind of thing, right? And
sure.
I really hope by then they'll have figured it out. That would be really nice, because it almost feels that like, especially like, I hate to bring it up, but it's like ever since Trump got elected, it's like the internet sucks, you know? It's just like, it's like a page was turned on that fateful day in November 2016, and the internet is just completely different, and the internet just sucks now across the board. And I don't know. I've definitely heard that sentiment before, and I don't want to get political at all and talk about that because we're running at it low on time anyway. But it's like, I don't know if it's that or me getting older or whatever, but it's just like, I used to love the internet so much, and now there's so much of it. I just sit here and just like, oh, I hate the internet. So I want the internet of Matt being 12 years old and being wide-eyed and probably getting into places he probably shouldn't be, and just exploring things, and like not like, how strict were your parents on telling you, you know, don't put any real information out on yourself, don't put your address in anywhere, don't put your phone number on anything. And now it's like, if you create a new Twitter account, you get locked within like a day if you don't put a validation phone number in there. You know, they say your account's suspicious and whatever, and it's like, damn, man, that centralization. It's. I hope it rebounds. I hope it's just a cycle where in, 20 years we can look back on this conversation and just be like, damn, those were some dark times.
Doubtful.
It's only like, that's the thing. That's the thing. The optimist in me would, like, the naive optimist in me would hope for that, but the pessimist and cynic in me is thinking it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate of trying to mitigate it, but I don't think it can ever, or at least I don't think it's like a cycle thing, right? If it's going to recover in any ways from our points of views, right? Not necessarily objective, but our points of views, then it will require paramount effort. But I will say that I don't think it's really any one incident. I think the change of internet platforms is the same as the change of games. People figured out that the more overly dramatic and frequent hits of dopamine and drama is what sells. Like they just figured that out, right? It's why mobile games got so big. It's why gacha games got so big, and it's why Twitter got so big. Quite frankly, right? Like, I can just post like crap. And then as long as one of it sticks,
as long as someone's angry at it,
like, yeah, and one of it gets just 40,000 retweets, I'm good. Like, man, that feels good. Like they figured out this weird formula, and I don't think that's how it was originally intended, but it's a business, and they have to either make money or get marketing value in one way or another, and I think platforms are just figuring that out. I mean, TikTok, Instagram stories, whatever,
yeah, totally,
all the same.
The funny thing is that, have you ever heard of the term Eternal September?
No.
You can look it up on Wikipedia, but Eternal September is a term that people on Usenet used to use back in like the 90s, where the idea was that every September all these students would go to university and they would have internet access for the first time. They would have access to BBS or Usenet or whatever. I was never I was 3 years old at the time, so obviously I wasn't part of this. But the idea was that every September you'd have all these newbies that would flood onto these discussion forums and would have to learn the etiquette and would have to, learn how to fit in and contribute, and like not, they get beaten up verbally essentially by the veterans who, had their own connections and whatever, because, you had to learn how to play nice in someone else's house. And the term Eternal September means, or it's referring to when AOL made it, or CompuServe or whatever, made it easier for home internet to have, or like homes to have internet. and it became a lot easier for people to just flood in. So, that September never ended because, people all of a sudden didn't have to learn the etiquette anymore. They were in modern parlance, the normies took over. And that's what I laugh at is, we are, or I am in this case, saying the exact same things that these people have already expressed. And I'm not saying that means it's valid. It just means that, we joke about Zoomers and stuff now, but in 20 years, the Zoomers are going to be feeling the exact same thing. So maybe that's just all it is. It's just part of growing up. Anyways, Will, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, all /Will Chobra. So that's WILLCHOBRA. And then I also have a small community of Discord, which the easiest way to join that is either to go to my Twitter or Twitch. There's links right on the page, the landing page for you to find out because I don't have a custom URL. But that's where you can find me. I stream 6 out of 7 days a week usually. Mostly I kind of cycle between like long form single player games currently on the whole JRPG Final Fantasy grind, and then in between kind of sneaking in different games. Usually try to go for like the indie games or shorter games, just to change the palette up a little bit. And then on my Twitter, I do talk about almost anything. Obviously used to be exclusive esports. Nowadays it's gaming, esports, Korea, all sorts of different topics.
Nice. Are you going to go to like Final Fantasy X once you're done 9? Or are you going to stick to the PS1 ones?
No, so originally I was going to take a break because I was going to do like 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. So I was like, okay, then I guess I'll do the first 3. And then I was going to do Kingdom Hearts and then go back to 10, 12, 13. But
oh my God, you have a docket for like 2 years, dude. Like you're good for like the next 2 years for stream games, man. Like,
oh, you don't even know, man.
Do you know
After that, we're considering like
Kingdom
the
Hearts
Tales
games
series.
There are? Like Kingdom Hearts. I'm gonna look up Kingdom Hearts on Wikipedia. You know how many Kingdom Hearts games there are? There's 3, 6, 9. There's 10 Kingdom Hearts games, man.
Are there really?
Like there are 10 of them. There's Kingdom Hearts, God. Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, which used to be a GBA game, but is now they made a 3D remake with the package of the PS4 collection.
I have the PS4.
So you have Kingdom Hearts, you have Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. Kingdom Hearts 2 comes after that. Kingdom Hearts Coded is an episodic mobile game, which I think there was a remake for the Nintendo DS called Kingdom Hearts Recoded, which I think there's a couple things in that custom, like in that pack of Kingdom Hearts games that are literally, we didn't remake the games, we just compiled all the cutscenes so you can get the story out of it and not need to actually play the game. So
Goodness.
You've got like Birth by Sleep, you've got Dream Drop Distance, you've got some other dumb PC browser games, which I guess you don't have to play. I think they were just like, okay, we're going to make that. I have it too. I have that Kingdom Hearts pack that they made for the PS4. I think they put it on Xbox as well. But they basically said, okay, here's all the games before 3 comes out. Go catch up. But like each one of those games
that's the one
is pretty.
I bought, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, even the Tales games, like the Tales games are pretty long.
Oh, Tales is a lot. Yeah, Tales is a lot. I know that for sure. But yeah, so that was the plan. Like you said, I am set for quite some time in terms of like needing a game to play in terms of my plan. So I'm not worried on that front. But everyone seemed to say that no, you should like go through to 10 before you jump off. Like it's like a nice way to wrap up like a generation of Final Fantasy games. So I've been convinced. So
12 is different.
12
is different. 12 is like a single player MMO. Like it's different.
Gotcha.
It will not feel the same. But I think what I've been really happy with in like games these days is that if there's all these like remasters or like not remakes but remasters where they'll like release it for Steam or whatever, but they'll put in these features that are like, all right, here's your 3 times speed, here's your auto battle, we understand that you maybe played this 80-hour long JRPG at one point and we understand you might want to play it again, but you don't want to really play it again because you have real things to like. I love how The Witcher 3 on Steam or on the Switch has a sync with the Steam version, so you can get your save thing. And same with Divinity Original Sin 2, I think, or maybe I'm thinking of the other one, Pillars of Eternity. One of those two games has a Steam sync thing where you can take your save file and get all your progress on a new console. And I'm like, oh my God, every game needs to do that. Please. Every game needs to have cross-platform cloud sync because, anyways. I am... You can find me on social media platforms, usually Matt Demers, MattDemers, or you can check out mattd.cc, which is my like catch-all username for, or not username, but URL, has all my stuff on it. I'm still working through the Ace Attorney games. I streamed before our last podcast episode, but didn't stream at all this week, so I'm still at the exact same place I was last week, hoping to finish up that first game soon. Otherwise, you can check out chillhop.com, which is the company I work for. We do cool lo-fi, hip-hop, that kind of stuff, which is nice for studying, playing games, sleeping, that kind of stuff. Good music, good people. One of my coworkers is in my chat right now, so hi. But yeah, if you guys want to give us a shout, if you guys want to show us some love on for these podcast episodes, you can check out gmncast.com, which is like where we post all the episodes and where you can see all the links to all the different platforms we're on, Spotify, iTunes, whatever. And then we have a subreddit, GMNcast. It's just r/GMNcast, which I just create a thread every week when we get these live. So if people want to comment on the episode itself, they can. So yeah, I don't know. Will, you want anything you want to end off with before we say goodbye, I guess?
No, nothing in particular. Just hope everyone is staying safe and still finding ways to entertain yourselves.
Yeah, I think that stay safe sentiment is something that isn't going to go away. You know, it isn't something that is going to like
anytime soon.
So I don't know. Anyways, thanks guys for listening. We will see you guys next week. Will, I hope you have a good morning.
And have a good night, Matt.
Yeah, man. Okay. See you next week.